It's your boy, Margie. Yo. And we back at it again with another reaction, man. I'm not finna say too much today. Just make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. Just please like, comment, subscribe for your boy. And I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all pray every single day and thank the man above for just waking y'all up. And today we got why the 90's basketball is better than today's basketball. And I feel like that's a fact. Back then was way different. Let's get it.
Things have changed a lot within the NBA over the last few decades, and although there is certainly a new generation of fans that the modern game appeals to, many traditional fans are having a difficult time finding it as intriguing. A lot of old school fans are very public about their dislike of the current NBA product, and I'm sure many of you viewers fit that description to a T. But without the full context, it's easy for those critics to simply come across like nostalgia-driven, grumpy old men who just want people to get off their lawn, rather than as objective individuals who have legitimate complaints about how the product's quality has declined over time. Today, we're using the NBA in the 1990s as the example and comparing it to the modern game as we analyze the differences that made the 90s brand so special. First off, the physicality. Even going back to the game of basketball's beginning in the late 1800s, it had a very physical presence. So much so that it was even played in a bloody steel cage. Almost a century later, the NBA in the 1980s featured a very punishing style, where basically a no easy layups rule was understood and accepted league-wide. The thing about the 1990s is I feel like this era was the perfect balance between the physicality of the previous eras and the fluidity of the modern game. A major reason for that is the flagrant foul rule was firmly implemented in the year 1990, which means teams like the Bad Boy Pistons and players like Bill Laimbeer could no longer simply assault people in an attempt to win basketball games. The 90s still had a very physical presence, but it wasn't overdone. And with the lack of a defensive 3-second violation, big men were allowed to camp in the paint and protect the rim at pretty much all times. Second is the mentality. Back in the 90s, players were not always so friendly with one another on and off the court, as almost every leader had a sense of pride in their team and teammates. Over the last 10 years, it's become more common for players to work out together in the off-season and even frequently recruit one another rather than focusing on beating each other. More on the reasons why in a bit. Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the few exceptions in the modern game, as he's made it abundantly clear that he doesn't work out with the other players in the off-season and isn't about that buddy-buddy culture. But the exception that Giannis is today was just the norm in the 1990s, as rivalries and a competitive dislike of one another was just more common. Another difference in mentality was the general player's willingness to play through bumps and bruises. There's been numerous players who have the reputation of taking nights off, even when they're healthy, or at least 90% healthy, for the sake of preserving their energy and health for the playoffs.
They spend thousands of dollars to watch our play.
If we as fans buy tickets to see our favorite teams play, we expect to see the star players if they're healthy enough to play. But the load managing era has ruined that experience for many people in plenty of instances. It's like Larry Bird once said, that if you're paid to go to work and you're able to go to work, you go to work. Great players from the 90s like Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Reggie Miller, and John Stockton have more seasons where they played at least 80 games than seasons that they did not. You can't say that about the careers of modern stars like LeBron James, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Chris Paul. Number 3. In the 90s, a player building his brand and his popularity was based almost entirely on his on-the-court success. I'm not going to act like this was true in absolutely every instance, as certain players like Dennis Rodman were able to become incredibly well-known for things beyond his play on the court. But nowadays, there's so much that a player can do through the internet and through social media to become one of the biggest names in the sport. Is this a negative thing in and of itself? Not necessarily. But what it does do over time is it creates less incentive for these younger players to become the best at their craft. If simply a pretty good player can get a $50 million contract and become well known as a social media personality, what incentive does that player have to become a great player on the court? A player like Steve Kerr was a valuable role player and was one of the most efficient shooters in the league, who played on the team that most people consider as the greatest NBA team of all time. And at that point, Steve was getting paid $750,000 a year. Nowadays, there are plenty of players all over the league who are about as valuable as Kerr was, but in many instances, they're making more than 10 times that amount of money. Even if adjusted for inflation, Steve's contract doesn't come anywhere close. Number 4. Contracts were longer, which gave fans a larger amount of time to develop an attachment to their stars and role players. In the 80s, Magic Johnson signed a 25-year, $25 million contract. In the 90s, contracts like Michael Jordan's were as long as 8 seasons. And in the NBA today, under this current collective bargaining agreement, the max length of a contract is only 5 seasons. And there's usually a player option around the middle point as well. Nowadays, with short contracts, plenty of options, and frequent trade requests, players are moving from team to team so frequently that it feels like players are just mercenaries for the organizations. This was really the case in the golden age of basketball, as most stars were just with one team until they sometimes switched jerseys in the very twilight of their career. Lastly, the NBA in the 90s, for the most part, was a political-free zone. Now, this doesn't mean that players didn't have their own personal politics and convictions back then. Of course they did. But the NBA league office and the brand itself wasn't looking to make public stances on politics like they do today, which back then created an exciting world of escapism where fans could come together and not feel divided by the everyday issues that are constantly being debated. The most focused upon story each night was something related to the game of basketball, like will the Knicks finally prevail in their rivalry against Michael Jordan, or who will assert themselves as the king of all big men, Olajuwon or Robinson. There's 2 ways the NBA can approach the topic of politics that I would embrace. 1, you could have a political-free zone where the NBA brand as a whole refuses to engage in any day-to-day politics and honestly recognizes itself as a non-political organization. Or there's option number 2, where the NBA welcomes all kinds of political stances. Players are free to express themselves and however they choose necessary, regardless of their own political affiliation. The problem with the NBA today is that it does neither of these. The league makes their political stances known and is partisan with those stances. Certain movements the league is openly promoting and in support of, while others it consistently discourages when it doesn't benefit their own interests. Understandably, this kind of hypocrisy pushes some fans away from the sport, which is an issue that was way less present in the more welcoming days of the 1990s NBA.
And, I hope this situation in the Persian Gulf puts sports in perspective. It's supposed to be entertainment. People have gotten out of hand with it, but hopefully sports will get back in its proper context, what it is, entertainment. And I hope for 2 hours a day, the troops over in the Persian Gulf and the fans can forget about everything and just enjoy themselves. All right.
Thanks for watching, everyone. My name is Johnny Arnett, and I
appreciate you, Johnny, for that video, man. I feel like the 90s was a so inspirational year, even though I'm born in the 2000s, but I see like movies, music, clothes. I'm into all those type of things, and I just feel like the impact y'all had back then was way better than it was today. You know what I'm saying? I feel like basketball wise, y'all had so much heart. You know what I'm saying? We got skill and talent, but y'all had so much heart. Y'all was men. Y'all had to grow up to be men like this. Today's society is not like that. You know what I'm saying? We grew up with tablets, iPads, iPhones, all these electronics, TV in our face, 24/7. Y'all outside 24/7. Y'all grinding. Y'all know what it takes to be great, and that's why it's a lot of millionaires and billionaires that's older. You know what I'm saying? But we got a lot of leverage because it's a lot of things to do in today's society. You know what I'm saying? But my salute to everybody in the 90s. The 90s was so different. Today basketball is soft too as well. Like fouling, you see people at the free throw line 24/7. Back in the day, you get in a fight, you don't get no tech. You play it out, like, you know. But it's just so much to it, and I love this video. But I appreciate y'all for tapping in with me. Please like the video, subscribe, and I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. Hopefully I become one of y'all favorite reactors. I see y'all. Your boy Markio out.